Hello and welcome to Today in the World, where I'll be talking about news from around the world and giving you my thoughts. Before I get into any of the news updates or any of the news stories for today, I just want to say a little something. Yesterday, I learned why you don't hold the mic super close to your mouth. I like to hold stuff in my hands, I like to fiddle with stuff. That's why I like holding the mic up. I will stop myself from doing that. If you see me fiddling with something in my hand, just be happy it's not the mic, because I tried listening to it. It was pretty bad. The audio quality yesterday was terrible. I'm sorry for that. Anyways, I'm just going to move on to the updates. It's mostly just updates on ongoing news stories. And so that's just what I'm going to be getting into today. I'm going to start off with the update for Venezuela. So today, the U.S. government has fully recognized the opposition presidential candidate Gonzalez as the winner of the presidential election in Venezuela. This has come amid calls from multiple governments, including South American governments like Brazil, like Colombia, like Mexico, who are allies of Maduro, for the Venezuelan National Electoral Council to release the voter tallies and the vote counts. Neither the opposition leader, Machado, nor the opposition President Gonzalez have been seen in public since their rally on Tuesday in Caracas. And there have been open calls from the leader of the National Assembly in Venezuela to have them jailed and calling them criminals and fascists. It sounds kind of familiar, like what I've been hearing coming out of the United States. That's kind of interesting how that works. Just a little similarity we can see. Anyway, the opposition government has claimed they have physical evidence that Maduro has not won the election, but they haven't released it, and I have to wonder, why didn't they release it? Like, it seems if you have hardcore proof that you won the election and the guy who you claim didn't win the election, then why not release the proof to the international or global audience? I don't really know what to make of that. It's very weird. Because now you have Maduro, who hasn't released the vote counts for the election, and who's claiming that he hasn't released these vote counts because the National Electoral Council has come under cyber attacks, but he hasn't elaborated on that. And then you also have the opposition government claiming they have physical evidence that they won the election, but we haven't seen proof of that. It's feeling a little bit like a he said, she said situation. It's so wild. You figure if one of the sides has concrete proof that they won the election, it would be released, and then there would no longer be any calls on either side for the other one to step down. But we haven't seen evidence from either side, and you have to wonder, if you're both making claims, why wouldn't one of you release the evidence of your claims or back up your claims? Yeah. It's just, it doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. Based on how Venezuela has been run in the past and how their economy is currently doing, I would still support the opposition government for change. So, I don't know. Maybe the evidence on either side it's not like damning evidence. Maybe it's like circumstantial evidence or something. I cannot think of another reason why they wouldn't release their evidence. It does not make sense to me. And I'm going to quickly touch on the prisoner swap again. I talked about that yesterday, and I just want to quickly touch on how Putin reacted to the prisoner swap. Putin is claiming it as a victory for him, and I'm not really surprised because I also kind of see it as a slam dunk for him. The reason why I see it as a slam dunk for him is because not only is he getting a lot of agents back, a lot of sleeper agents, and he's getting an assassin back, but also this sends a message to other Kremlin spies, other Kremlin agents, that if they're sent on missions abroad and they're captured, Russia will find a way to get them home. I don't think that's a good message that we on the international stage want to be sending to Russian agents and spies at the time that we're living in. And I think this really almost drives home the point that this is a loss on the Western world. I think we kind of lost out on this deal. And I do just want to say again, reiterating that it's absolutely fantastic that these people that we got back, that the West got back, that they now have their freedom, that they now can go to the countries where they're from, that they can now spend time with their families again, because there really was no proof for a lot of these people on why they were jailed. So it's great that the people who didn't commit any crimes were let go. It's not great that the people who did commit crimes were also let go. Anyway. And then the Middle East. There's a lot to talk about in the Middle East. I'm just going to start off by talking about... I'll start off with the Israel-Turkey dispute in NATO. Then I'll probably move on to address the rest of what's happening currently in the Middle East. Israel is not a member of NATO. They are a NATO ally. But they keep making requests of NATO that Turkey be kicked out, which is kind of wild. They don't really have a stake in NATO. I don't think they should be asking NATO to kick out Turkey. And they're doing it because Turkey keeps vetoing cooperation between NATO and Israel because of the Gaza war. So according to sources anyway, Turkey has vetoed all NATO meetings and exercises with Israel, and they claim they'll keep blocking Israel and NATO's interactions until the conflict ends. It's just wild that you have a non-NATO state who is calling on NATO to kick out one of its most important member states, Turkey. Turkey is important because they have the second largest military force in NATO after the United States. They're also in like a really good spot for the rest of NATO. They're right on the border, like between Asia and Europe. So that's pretty fantastic. Like it's just a good strategic location. And then in terms of like the Black Sea, they're right on the Black Sea. They can keep Russia from reinforcing their fleets in the Black Sea. They have good lines of communication with both Russia and Ukraine. So there's no real hope that Turkey would even be removed from NATO. I think it's stupid for Israel to call for Turkey to be removed from NATO. From Israel's point of view, I understand why they're doing it. But I personally don't think it's a great look. And then, also in the Middle East, just an update a little bit on what Hezbollah has been up to. So recently, their military leader was killed from an Israeli strike into Beirut. And they were firing rockets yesterday. I think it was like 25 rockets. Today they haven't fired anything. I don't know if maybe they're gearing up for like an invasion or something, but there is internal pressure from the Lebanese government that Hezbollah not draw them into another war with Israel, because in 2006 Lebanon and Israel had a war, and Lebanon saw a lot of death and destruction in the war with Israel. So it looks like they're really trying to avoid a repeat of the same situation. And then also, because of increased tensions in the Middle East, the U.S. will be sending forces into the Middle East, mostly ships, aircraft carriers. I believe there's also a fighter squadron that's been deployed. This is happening because of, not because of, but because the U.S. is worried that Iran will actually make good on its threats to Israel. The reports I see say that they're planning on sending an aircraft carrier. They want to send some warships and a fighter squadron to the Middle East. I'm hoping that this is just to act as sort of deterrence, like a warning to Iran that they shouldn't mess with Israel, and that it will prevent a full-scale assault. Because if this doesn't deter Iran, then we're definitely looking at a war in the Middle East, and there's a real possibility that Western nations could be dragged into that war. And it's like foreign governments are legitimately worried about this. The U.S., for instance, has an amphibious assault ship in the area, according to the Pentagon, and they say that it will be used so that they can quickly evacuate their citizens that are living in Lebanon right now, if the need should arise. France is also urging its citizens to leave Iran, because they're worried about escalation. They told French people who are in the Middle East to be very vigilant, to avoid going to demonstrations, and to leave as soon as possible, as well as to citizens who aren't in the Middle East to just avoid traveling in that area altogether, because they are legitimately worried about military escalation. And Israel, for its part, they've closed down factories on their northern border. They have shut down airlines operating in that area. Like if we're just looking at this, it looks like foreign governments and Israel are legitimately concerned about escalation in the area. That's something I think it's a clear sign to the rest of us. We should be worried about what's happening in the Middle East, and whether or not Iran can be deterred, or whether or not diplomatic overtures can actually cool temperatures and cooler heads prevail. That's just the situation right now. Yeah, well, I guess we'll see what's happening. We'll continue to monitor the situation, and hopefully there's nothing else to monitor, because it's getting... I really don't want to say it. I'm going to say it. It's getting spicy. Stupidest thing ever. Just don't mind me. Anyway. And then there's two more things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the Nigerian protests, and then I'm also going to talk about a little bit of an update in the South China Sea. So the Nigerian protests, we're taking a look at that because there's been a report from one newspaper that 9 people had been killed. Another newspaper was saying 21 people had been killed on the first day of protests. And there's potential that the police will be asking the army for help. The army has said that they'll only intervene if there's looting and destruction of public properties. And then also, just along with the deaths of some of the protesters, there are reports that more than 400 protesters have been arrested on Friday. That's according to the Nigerian police. They've also reported that curfews have been imposed because there have been looting and destruction of government and public properties. The protesters, however, did defy the curfew, which resulted in clashes with the police. It looks like the police are hoping to deter as much violence as they can. However, between 9 and 21 people were killed from the bombing we talked about, as well as from the police. So, I mean, hopefully they actually are trying their best to deter more violence instead of cause more violence. I guess we'll find out what it's looking like in a couple more days as the protests continue. And if the protests are actually successful and they do manage to change their government, we did touch on this when we first talked about Nigeria, but there's no reason that the Nigerian economy shouldn't be much larger, and there's no reason they shouldn't have one of the lowest levels of poverty in Africa. It's due to their large oil reserves. They should be doing economically a lot better than they are, but corrupt politicians, what are you going to do? And then the South China Sea. So the update there is basically that the Philippines and Japan have been holding joint military exercises in the South China Sea. This is a collaborative effort between these two nations, and it's focused on pushing back against China's assertiveness in the region and against China's control or claim of control over the South China Sea. The drills have been occurring within the Philippines exclusive economic zone, and it's reported that the exercises are similar to the ones that have been reported between Washington and the Philippines around 2 days ago. The armed forces of the Philippines have also stated that they have done these exercises to strengthen regional cooperation. And the drills have also come after Manila and Tokyo signed an agreement that allowed the deployment of troops in each territory. So if Japan needs to, they can deploy their troops to the Philippines. If the Philippines needs to, they can deploy troops to Japan. Which it's definitely good that there's some Indo-Pacific country alliances coming up, and that this region is not only relying on the U.S., but they're actively working with each other. Yeah. They undertook tactical maneuvers in the West Philippine Sea, and this is basically just what the Philippine government names parts of the South China Sea that are closest to its coast. Both Japan and the Philippines are longtime allies of the U.S., and they have now deepened their security ties due to China's saber rattling toward Taiwan and China's claim over the South China Sea. These military exercises come as we see an escalation in confrontations between the Chinese Navy and the Philippines Navy in the South China Sea. That's all I have for you today. And as always, if I've missed any international stories, please let me know. I can be reached via my email, todayintheworld2024@gmail.com, or in the comment section of wherever you watch the video. And if you're wondering where I get my news mostly from Ground News. They are pretty quick to update their stories. I'll also get sometimes like breaking leads from X, and then I will look into that on news sites. I don't use Google except for my Gmail apparently. Anyways, I hope this was informative and that you listen to me next time. I will continue to monitor these stories and let you know what's happening today in the world.